In the Nationalist Movement Party's MHP election manifesto, promises for improving the situation of economically disadvantaged segments of society weigh as heavily as criticism of the ruling party for risking the nation's unity by negotiating a settlement on the Kurdish issue. One of the major pledges the MHP's leader made as he presented the party's election manifesto on Sunday was increasing the minimum wage, which is currently TL $949, $354, to TL $1,400, $517. By attaching bonuses to the minimum wage for those who live in big cities, the party apparently hopes to make its offer look more attractive than that of the main opposition Republican People's Party, CHP, which previously promised to increase it to TL $1,500, $560. In addition to a net TL $1,400, those earners of minimum wage who live in big cities will be paid an additional TL $137, as a transportation subsidy. Additionally, those who do not have a house will get an additional TL $250, $92, per month in rental aid. This will allow a minimum wage earner living in a big city to earn as much as TL $1,750, $646, Bosley said to a large crowd of supporters in Ankara Arena Gymnasium. Like the CHP, the MHP also promised to pay 2 extra wages to pensioners in March and September. However, the MHP's pledge is different from that of the CHP in that the MHP will be offering pensioners 2 minimum wages a year, while the CHP said pensioners would be receiving 2 extra salaries before each of the 2 religious holidays during the year. As was the case with the main opposition party, which made public its election manifesto 2 weeks ago, the MHP also said no tax will be deducted from the minimum wage. The MHP leader also had good news for farmers, who will be able to buy a liter of fuel, which currently costs around TL $1.50, a liter, for only TL 1.75, 65 cents, and taxes on fuel and fertilizers will be eliminated. The MHP's pledge regarding the price of fuel remained slightly above that promised by the CHP, which promised to offer it at TL 1.5, 50 cents, to farmers. Also, public workers made to work on contract without any job security will be granted job security, Bosley said. The amount of financial resources required to institute the party's pledges is estimated to be TL $71.9 billion, $26.5 billion. But MHP leader Devlet Bosley, who underlined that the party aims for power in the upcoming general elections, said the party would not have difficulty creating the necessary financial resources. An additional TL $13.4 billion, $4.9 billion, could be collected through an efficient fight against the informal economy that would lead to an increase in tax revenue, while an efficient fight against smuggling could provide an additional TL $6.2 billion, $2.3 billion, Bosley said, among other measures to raise the money. The MHP is the last party to reveal its election manifesto ahead of the upcoming general elections in June, which the leader said was a political tactic. Bosley enumerated 2 reasons for the move. The first was to prevent other parties from copying from the MHP, as was the case, the MHP leader maintained, when the ruling Justice and Development Party, AK Party, copied from the MHP in the previous general elections. Because all they members of the ruling party know is stealing, Bosley said. The second reason for the delay was to prevent the MHP's election promises from getting lost among too many voices, given that the other 3 parties represented in Parliament announced their manifestos in the past 2 weeks. The day on which the MHP announced its election manifesto is celebrated as a day of Turkism by the party to commemorate those who faced heavy terms of imprisonment for making nationalist propaganda back in 1944 following a trial on May 3. The MHP leader also said the party would accept the reality of Semevis, Alevis houses of worship, whereas the government has so far refrained from granting them the status of places of worship. State funds will be granted for Semevis and the Religious Affairs Directorate will also be reorganized to make a place for Alevis in it, Bosley said. For most Alevis, Alevism is a non-orthodox sect of Islam, but the government, which represents a Sunni version of Islam, has so far failed to recognize it as such. "We are determined to save the country from robbers," the MHP leader vowed, underlining that the aim of its party is to work for the development and unity of the country. Harshly criticizing President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and the government for having engaged in talks with the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, the MHP leader maintained that Erdogan is anything but a nationalist. The MHP leader also drew attention to the fact that there is no reference to Turkish identity in the ruling party's election manifesto. Bosley's remarks are a response to the ruling party and Erdogan's increasing efforts to appeal to nationalist voters ahead of the elections on June 7. Some recent surveys revealed that the ruling AK party has lost some of its nationalist voters to the MHP because of negotiations conducted until recently with the PKK, which is recognized as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the US and the EU.